What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Sophisticated Man podcast. I have been doing these basically once a week. Obviously, I have a new guest with me that I'd like to introduce, Mr. Joseph. What's happening, man?
What's up, Tino? Life's good, man. How are you?
Absolutely. Things are good, man. Things are good. Just start of a busy day, but yeah, man, things are going well over here, man. I
Appreciate
wanted
you having me on, man.
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to bring you on because me and Joseph have very similar messages. I feel like we have very similar pieces of content. Funny enough, we're actually in the same like coaching group, accountability group. So I was like, it's kind of like an awesome way to bring us on and have a nice little collab. So it's kind of a no-brainer to bring them on. So very quickly, for anybody watching that maybe doesn't know you or know what you're about, quick kind of just describe a little bit about who you are, what it is that you do, yeah, and why you do what you do.
Awesome, man. So my brand is called Men of High Value on Instagram, YouTube, basically everywhere. And my focus is on helping single men to succeed as entrepreneurs.
Mm,
So I would say I mentor startup entrepreneurs, if you will.
mm,
And the focus is not the short term, it's the long term, being since they're single, and preparing them for
right.
establishing their own families in the future.
Mm,
And my mess became my message. I started a family way before establishing financial freedom. I
mm,
saw what type of mess I put myself in.
mm-hmm.
Got three kids really early, etc. And I just figured out, like if I can prepare guys who really want to have families and set them up the right way by getting financial freedom first, bro, like they can
Yeah.
establish amazing families. So we're building, we're gonna build communities and do the whole thing over the long term. So
Mm.
that's me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really connect with that myself personally, and I think I love that. I definitely want to touch on the family aspect of this at some point in this podcast because that's huge, and I think that goes it kind of goes a little bit untalked about in the niche that we're in, at least in the global scale. Like not many creators do talk about that, but I wanted to start off with a question because just based off of your brand name, men of high value, that term gets thrown around so much and it's kind of like oversaturated at this point, I think, in our market. I mean, there's just so much people that have misinformation about what that really means. There's so many definitions of what, they character in their head of what they think that is. In your point of view, in your perspective, how would you define a high value man?
So it's actually pretty interesting that 4 years ago when I started my YouTube channel, no one had that name, right?
Yeah,
No
yeah.
one was tossing that name around. It's like alpha, beta, it's like that's
Hmm.
kind of what was it. And
Yeah,
now
yeah.
people are moving away from that and talking about high value men and low value men. So I'm
Hmm.
very happy with the name that we managed to get.
Yeah.
But in general, what is a high value man? It's someone who takes responsibility, and someone who is willing to obviously protect and provide, and to be a man, like to be masculine.
Yep.
Like, so the more masculine you are, the more manly you are, the more high value you're automatically going to be. It's kind
Hmm.
of how I look at things.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of irresponsible men on the planet these days, and that just means that they're feminine. That's kind of how I look at it. And that, is for men to be feminine is just plain low value. It's not very attractive, and it's not what people want to either be with, for women's standpoint, and for men's standpoint, it's just like we'd rather spend time with high value men, right? So
Yeah.
we got to be fighting for our masculinity, our own personal masculinity.
Hmm.
What
I,
about you?
I agree.
How do
Yeah,
you
I
define
mean,
that?
for me, I kind of have the same type of definition, but for me, it's very similar to yours. Like my definition of a high value man is really um a man that knows how to build himself up and learn to create something meaningful in his life, whether that's a business, could be a family, it could be the relationships that he has. Basically you're a guy that knows how to take something and then take nothing and turn it into something. So you're a guy that is building, you're creating, you're moving towards a grander goal or purpose. So for me, that's high value. That's a guy that's like he's on his mission. He's doing things that he enjoys. And he's of service. I think a man that really gets to a certain level, once you start to really like, okay, let's say you get in the gym, you get six pack, you get six figures, that's awesome. But I think there comes a point where you're like, damn, I want to give back. I want to contribute. And I think service is is a virtue that a lot of men, I think, inherently have. I think we all want to do that. But obviously, in order to do that, you first have to serve yourself. You can't give, from an empty cup. So I think once a guy reaches that level, it's like he's like solidified as like a high value man, at least in my opinion.
Powerful. I love it. I'd say, I mean, if you have built a six-figure income in some way, shape, or form, you have provided quite a lot of service. You
Right.
know,
Absolutely.
so and it goes in the name as well in terms like of if you're a high value man, it means that you've provided a lot of value to people,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
So I love your definition, man. Excellent.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and really, I think it all comes down to creating something that is impactful. I mean, there's like a lot of things that are in life, I think, that are very self-oriented. It's like, oh, I'm just doing this because I feel good about it. Or I'm just doing it because, I get a kick out of it. It feeds my ego. But that's very like low value things, low quality. Like in my opinion, that's like low value things. Like you're just simply doing it to make yourself feel better. But once you get to that point of like, all right, I'm giving value, I'm giving, because masculinity is really about giving to the world, giving to your woman, giving to others, your community, right? So that's the energy of a man that's of high value because he's giving all this value to the world. It's like people that take value, that's like, that's a low quality trait. People are just looking to take things from other people, energy, whatever. Um, so I stress for guys to give, like learn ways to give value, give it could be, and like there's so many ways to define value. I think like that's another term that's out there that like it's very um misunderstood. So maybe we can kind of jump into that, like just in terms of like actual tangible value. Like what do you think value is?
I The first thing that comes to mind is win-win,
Yeah.
right? To produce a win for both parties where there was no, you know, win before type thing.
Mm,
And kind of have your Midas touch on different things, right?
man.
Being able to if yeah, so if I create a deal with someone where both of us are giving each other something that we feel are low value, what we have, like it is not. Do you get what I'm saying? Like
Mm,
someone else's treasure is someone else's trash type thing.
yeah. Yep.
And so that type of thing, like so if we're both exchanging something, we're producing more value because we
Hmm.
both have something that we don't need and we're giving it to the other person who needs it more than we do, right? And so
Hmm.
you get a fair exchange. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the first thing that comes to mind when you're talking about value and value creation.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but I mean, in general, there's two different sets. You have the female aspect of things, like what is it that's valuable for them,
Right.
and then you have what's valuable for other men. And very often, when you're providing value for other men, like you need, it's the camaraderie, the brotherhood.
Hmm.
But very often, we're also looking for money, right?
For
We don't
sure.
really want to spend time with a lot of guys who are like not ambitious and not wanting to become successful
Hmm.
and to climb, right?
Yeah.
So money is an important aspect of those things.
Hmm. I
How
would
about you?
agree. I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of layers to what value means because I think as you were kind of just saying, like it means different things for different people. So I think value is very subjective. So like the value that I provide someone, maybe in like another country or not even a country, but like another person might think, well, that's not valuable. That doesn't add anything to me. So I think value in that sense is subjective, but it's also like what it is that you can offer somebody. Like if you really think about it, what is even value? Like you look at it in a money sense, right? Like gold. Why is gold valuable? Because it provides people with wealth, with freedom, with something that they can use. So value to me is like if I have a hammer and a guy has a box of nails but no hammer, I'm a valuable asset to that guy because I have what he needs or I have what could help him out. So
Yeah,
to me, it's value is your ability to kind of coming back to my old the thing I said a minute ago about service, being of use, being of service to someone or something or community. Like
love that.
you have wisdom. If you've done something for a number of years, you can offer coaching, you can offer guidance in that way. Or if you're really jacked, and you know how to eat well, you properly and train, you can teach someone else how to do that. Or if you're just a positive person, I think if you're just a good dude, you know how to make people laugh, you're a good time to be around. That's value because you're giving people that good energy, that good experience, and people crave that. And even from a woman's perspective, like what makes a man valuable in a woman's eyes, it's the same kind of qualities. Like if you're a masculine man that knows how to provide, that knows how to protect, that makes her feel safe and feel feminine, that's valuable. So I think value is subjective, but it's the ability to offer somebody something that they don't inherently already have themselves, I think.
I love that. The key word is utility.
Exactly.
Are
Yep.
you useful,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Can other people, make use of your skills or mindset or
Hmm.
understanding of different subjects,
Exactly.
right? And so the more you learn about the world, the more you understand about how things work,
Hmm.
the more useful you become, right? Because people are always looking for solutions to problems,
Yep.
and if you're able to solve them with whatever tool you got,
Hmm.
then you're useful.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Agreed, man. 100%. I'm all about like being an asset in somebody's life, not a liability. So if you're someone that can give value and you're a type of individual that can make this person's life improve, and I mean, even yourself, even your own life, like if you're improving your life, you have a lot of assets. You have things that you can then resources that you can provide for yourself or for other people, you know. And if you're a liability, you're doing just the opposite. You're just taking and you're not giving value in any way.
we're all trying to evolve, right? This is
Yeah,
like the
that's it.
world has just been one constant evolution.
Yeah.
And how has it evolved? It's evolved because people have found utility in other people and
Hmm.
worked together to solve problems that we've had in the past. And so
For sure.
we're in a situation right now where things have been solved quite well,
Hmm.
but there's a lot of problems in the world still,
Oh
and
yeah.
lots more to come, right? So
Hmm.
but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, man. I think that, what you said a while ago too about responsibility, I think that's a big part of a man's evolution, right? His development is like being a man that becomes responsible because I think that responsibility is it's such an underutilized uh virtue in masculinity that I don't think enough guys talk about. Like you see like the popular videos on masculinity, masculine high value men, and like all these like different red pill content creators. They talk about stuff like men being useful, men providing on all that stuff. But I think what they don't talk about enough is the responsibility that comes with that. Because I think a guy that garners a lot of responsibilities in his life, that makes you mature. Like that literally like makes you step into your manhood by by force. Like you don't really have a choice. It's like now I'm responsible for this stuff. How can I take care of these things? How can I make use of the things that I can control? Because a guy with no responsibilities is you're basically still a child. Like you're basically still a young boy without, things to kind of mentor, help, whatever, give service to. I think that's a huge aspect of every man's life, when he can really start to garner more responsibility. What were your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, you should begin to gain responsibility in your youth, in your teenage years, and start
Hmm.
to build from that.
Yeah.
Uh, what might be and a controversial topic when it comes to responsibility, and is when it comes to women, and
Yeah.
how are we responsible towards them? Like, how do we prove our masculinity when it comes to that? Because there's a lot of guys who would be high value men who are masculine, so to speak, and yet they sleep around with a bunch of women and then basically toss them to the wayside. Like, how responsible in society are those guys when these women now are the future mothers of, you know, it's just like that for me is one of the things that we're struggling with in society today, that
Yeah.
we need solutions for, because we're, complaining, like I've seen, on your Instagram, where you're basically talking about promiscuity and how it's kind of um, hypocritical what men are doing these days, of just
Hmm.
basically sleeping around with a bunch of people and then complaining that
Yeah.
women are promiscuous. It's just like, it's
Yeah.
mind blowing that they don't really see the connection.
Hmm.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought this up because that was something I was going to ask you about, but we're kind of just naturally in this part of the conversation. So I'm glad you're talking about this. Um, so my thoughts on that are very simple. Like if I'm doing something that's clearly like not ethical, or if it's just self-serving, or if it's, gonna screw somebody up mentally, like I have to take responsibility for the fact that I did this. That's my fault. It's like taking accountability, right? So if I, let's say, I'm trying to use like an analogy. Um, so if I ate a bunch of food all at once and got fat, am I gonna get mad at like just my fat, like my body, my fat tissue, or am I gonna get mad at my actions because I chose to do all of this? So my thinking is that if we want less women to sleep around, be promiscuous, do OnlyFans, all this kind of stuff, well, we need to stop rewarding that behavior by giving them exactly what they want. And my thinking is, because it's such a taboo topic, because these guys talk about a lot of men's coaches, right? They talk about being that kind of guy. Like, oh, well, men can sleep around, women can't. It's like a double standard type of thing, which biologically, like, I know that that's true. Like, men don't have as much to lose when it comes to being promiscuous, just strictly from a biological standpoint. Like, sure, you can argue that, but does that mean that you need to do that? Does that mean that leads to better relationships? Does that mean that leads to better society? I don't personally think so. So you have to kind of be a responsible guy and think, if I did this to someone else, it's going to just further that trauma and that just negative cycle to the next person, because she's going to carry that into the next guy, and that guy's going to carry that into the next girl, who's going to carry that into the next guy. So it's like it's a never-ending loop, and it's like, when does it stop, right? So I think yeah, I think as a man, even taking responsibility for that aspect of your life, um, you got to change yourself before you can, really change anybody else.
Absolutely. I think that thing's huge.
It's
If
big.
you really if you really think about it, it's the main topic that we should all be talking about at this point,
Yeah,
which I believe we eventually will.
I think so.
But
We're
it's
getting
just
there.
that people are not there yet. Like, I was
Yeah.
so excited when I saw the podcast between you and Holistic Manhood, because I was like, oh my god, I've been
Yeah.
talking about this for so long.
Yeah.
And because you guys were talking about exactly that,
Hmm.
parts of the podcast.
Hmm.
And we are on an exponential decline, so to speak, when it comes to society at large. Uh,
Absolutely.
Not necessarily that society is going to collapse, or that we're going to go back to the dark ages or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's just that we're kind of on the pendulum. We're swinging towards an
Hmm.
extreme of sorts, of kind of
Yeah.
hedonistic living, where
Yep.
people are not really understanding how relationships work. A lot of people are traumatized by relationships, by parents, by this, by that, and the
Hmm.
other. And it really comes down to families not functioning. And then we have to
Absolutely.
ask ourselves, why are families not functioning? And well, there you go. the
Hmm.
struggle of pair bonding between the genders.
Yeah.
And that's really what makes or breaks a family,
Hmm.
if you really think about it, right? So
Yeah.
we got to go back to basics, and basics being that men uh, should take responsibility for women's um, problems when it
Yeah.
comes to how the partner counts, etc., etc., right? And
Hmm.
not, at least not participate in
Yeah.
digging that woman's grave, if that makes sense.
Hmm. No, I 100% agree because I think like if I was a dog owner, so I never really owned a dog myself, but had one earlier in life. Like my parents had one, but I grew up really without too many pets. But this is something a lot of dog owners can relate to. If a dog pees in the house, are you gonna just sit there and just shame the dog and say, "Why would you do that? Oh my God, terrible dog, blah blah blah." But really, it's your fault as the owner for letting that happen and choosing to not train it properly or, to make sure it doesn't happen again, right? And the same thing I can apply towards relationships. Like if you're shaming women all the time for being whores or promiscuous or whatever, you're saying, "Oh, bad, bad, this is terrible." But then you go about and do the same exact thing, you're just leading into more of the problem that you don't want. Like you're contributing to the problem that you do not want to have. So that I think is a big, like, for some reason that goes over a lot of guys' heads and they think, well, I'm a man, I can sleep around. Like it's different for men and women, which I'm not gonna say you're wrong. It is different for men and women. Like men are viewed as more like I'm not gonna say valuable, but just more like respected, I guess, in a way, or more like I don't know, guys kind of like see guys that get with a lot of women. They're like, oh, he has skills. He's a good dude, which you do have skills. I think it's a lot harder for men to get sex than it is for women. But I think that, um, yeah, constantly doing that though. And here's the thing, like, I think the abundance is the problem because like abundance is great in women and money and whatever you're trying to do. I personally think, though, like coming back to responsibility, it's what you do with abundance that matters. So if you have everything in the world, but you abuse that or you use it in a negative way, abundance can be very a negative thing. So if you have all the women in the world and you choose to sleep around and do what you want, well, that doesn't make you very responsible. That means you're 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 avoiding responsibility actually by doing that. So in that sense, you're not being a high value guy. You're actually being low value because you just want sex and you just want the very basic like surface level things, which I think
Shallow, instant
shallow.
gratification. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like instant, quick pleasure, like not worrying about the long term. And I don't think guys even know this, but like doing that all the time, it literally makes you addicted. And like it builds that addiction and like it prevents you from actually looking at a woman and seeing her for more than just, oh, she's like a hot girl. Like you can't go past that because you just look at sex.
Yeah, I wanted to say something from what you said now, in terms of, does it really is it bad for men to be doing it, right? Because like you said, they might be looked at, respected by their peers or whatever. Oh wow, you've managed to be
Yeah,
with so many women, type thing.
yeah,
But there are negative consequences to men
most
sleeping
definitely.
around. Like I see that
Sure.
all the time, and you can
Yeah.
even see that at the highest levels, like the Dan Bilzerians or the Undertates or whatever else.
Mm,
Um, just seeing, I mean, Undertate is a complex
he is.
story, but in
Yeah.
terms of like the Dan Bilzerians and all those guys,
Mm,
where they're like, it's not interesting, like.
yeah.
I, and the women that they very often get are not the type of quality feminine women that you
No, they're
would
not.
hope for or build a family with, if
Hmm.
that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's and also I really think that they chip away at their own morals, Like
Hmm.
if you look at your morals as like a square thing, and then it turns around, and then it's chipped every single time that it turns around, type thing.
Hmm.
It's eventually it's going to be a circle, right?
Yeah.
And if your morals is a square, then and you've become a circle, like your character has been completely obliterated,
Hmm.
and you're no longer, like, you can't be a high value man anymore, right?
Yeah.
And also I see a lot of guys, let's say not the big guys, but the smaller guys, let's say,
Hmm.
who now are interested in casual relationships, or they really want to get laid because they're still virgins or whatever. And then they get this one girlfriend, they manage to keep her for 4 weeks or three
Yeah.
months or whatever,
Yep.
and then she breaks up with them. They're like, oh no, and they're like depressed for 2 years,
Yep.
completely ineffective, not useful to anyone.
Hmm.
And they, they might even, want to harm themselves. Like,
Yeah.
it is detrimental to them as well, with the things that are happening in society, just
Hmm.
in general. It's not just the women that are damaged, so to speak. Like, men damage themselves as well.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. I think it's interesting because there's so much back and forth with that. Like guys, I think the guys that want to be promiscuous and want to do all of that, at some point in their life, they weren't very successful with women. And that's why, because like you value the things that you don't have. So if he's constantly needing and wanting sex all the time, it's because probably at one point you didn't have it very often. And you have that desire to get it because you've never experienced that. Which I think is
Overcompensation, right?
yeah, it's overcompensating. And I think there's a fine balance because there's there's a lot of like incel stuff where people are like, "Oh, like don't sleep around with women or like screw women, like I'm just gonna like remove myself completely from dating." And it's like I
Yeah.
don't think that's necessarily the answer either. I'm not saying like men shouldn't approach women and find women and talk to women they find attractive. I think you should do that. But you should also have a little bit of like responsibility. I keep bringing that word up, but responsibility with the way that you go about doing so. So if I'm dating or if I'm talking to women, I'm not going to like, let's say if I'm talking to three different girls, I'm not going to be like having sex with all three, maybe one, if any. But it's like, it's my decision who I choose to connect deeper with. Because like I made this rule for myself recently, very, very recently, actually. Because I used to do that. I used to like just do one night stands and hook up and I found that it was very unfulfilling. Like you don't really get much out of it. Like maybe it's fun for like a day, but then you're like, damn, it doesn't lead to anything. So afterwards, I was like, all right, I made this rule that I'm only gonna entertain sex with a woman when I really think that there's like a connection, there's a good vibe, not only physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. We connect on that level, and there's a potential that it'll probably go somewhere. Now, if it doesn't, that's fine too. It's not a big deal. But I think guys should be a lot more disciplined with their sex and not think, oh, I'm just going to give it away to anybody. And it sounds weird, but you almost want to make her earn it in a sense. Like prove to you, let her prove to you that she is that type of girl who has earned sex in that way. Don't just give it out to whoever because, we are talking about value. Like if you give it out all the time, if you're a guy that always constantly gives out his sex, it's not very valuable, is it? Because it's everywhere. But if you withhold that and you only give it out to women that are of high quality that you deem high quality, well, it's a lot more valuable because you're not doing it to just anyone.
Excellent, excellent. I do have one question though.
Sure.
Do would if we talk about responsibility and we talk about women, um, when a man actually develops skill with women, right?
Right.
And probably have friends, or maybe you're one of them who became skilled with women as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
Once you get to a certain level, you notice that you actually have way more power
Yeah.
in your relationships with women than you thought
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
had.
Yes.
And you're capable of retaining a woman
Mhm.
too.
Yes.
And so the question is, if we know how to retain anyone, uh, what's the most responsible thing to do when
Mm,
it comes to a relationship with her, right?
mm,
Because if you know how to retain a woman and you only have sexual relationships with a woman that like she could be the one,
mm,
that means that you actually could keep her,
yeah.
right? You don't have to let her go.
Mm,
So is that a proof of your responsibility that you actually don't let a woman go because you actually know how to retain her?
mm,
Just an interesting
yeah.
take on it. Just would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you, like you said, when you get a certain level of skill with women, you know how to communicate, you know how to lead, you know how to make her feel comfortable, your standards start to increase. Because if you do it so many times, you're like, all right, well, I can talk to basically any girl. Now I want to talk to ones that really excite me, that really like I'm interested in. And once you get to that point, I think you start to have a level of decision to make. Like if you want to just live the life of like, okay, I'm not looking for a relationship right now. I'm just kind of enjoying myself and just kind of seeing what's out there. That's fine. But if you feel like you're ready to have a woman in your life, to have someone that kind of builds with you and she's on your journey, helping support you in your mission. And that's kind of a caveat too. I just want to throw in there. I don't think you should ever like look for a relationship. Like, oh my God, where is she at? Like, I need to get a girlfriend. Don't even worry about that. Like just enjoy your journey and that stuff will just come the more that more you're engaged with it. But I think that once you understand how to get a woman, the next skill set that you have to develop is to maintain it. Because a lot of these pickup artists, a lot of these like even dating coaches sometimes, they'll tell you all the skills you need to pick up a woman, but how do you keep her? How do you keep her attracted to you? That's a whole other skill set that is very not even talked about, I think, because there is a difference. Once you can keep a woman, your devotion and your commitment is what separates that responsibility and no responsibility. Because if you're committed, then you're just with this girl. You made a promise. You said me and you are exclusive. We're not going to sleep around. We're not going to lie to each other. That's what this is. It's a relationship. And I think that even the definition, I think, of a relationship nowadays is just so skewed, and people don't really know what that even means, right? Like they think it's there's a million different things. Um, but I personally think that yeah, if you choose to be committed to one girl, that's you have to be responsible in keeping her attracted, in knowing how to continually date her, because once you get the girl, you don't just stop and think, all right, well, I'm gonna kick back and crack a couple beers and hang out. You have to keep her attracted to you by continually dating her, continually vetting her, making sure that you're making it exciting. So I think the responsibility comes in the courtship process because that I don't think that ever ends. You have to continually show up as that guy, even after you guys have decided, if you decided to be in an exclusive relationship, you have to keep that up. So I think that's where the responsibility comes in on a man's part.
All right, cool. So one of the highlights that I have on my page is it's a quadrant of basically confident and committed,
Yeah,
or unconfident, uncommitted, etc. And so I
yeah,
put
yeah.
high value men. Like men of high value are those that are confident and committed.
Sure.
Um, and my and maybe this could be like a small controversy that I bring up here now. But
Hmm.
in terms of, is it more responsible to stay voluntary celibate until you actually are ready to commit, like really commit? Because the thing is that, and you've mentioned this privately to me in the past, like, I should be able to test drive, or, like
Hmm.
before I actually commit for life, because oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
then you've committed, and what if you guys are not sexually compatible, etc., etc., right?
Right. Right.
But but if we look at it from that perspective, we look at society today, and if we were to accept at least that thinking of like, I need to test drive it, then we're just decreasing the level of damage, but we're still doing damage if you end up not being with her,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Sure.
Or am I completely off on this one?
Well, I think it comes down to again, coming back to responsibility, coming back to honesty and truthfulness. So if you're just completely transparent with this person and you guys mutually decide, hey, maybe it doesn't work out, maybe we're not the right fit for each other, and you leave on good terms, I think that you might still do a little bit of damage, but it's a lot less powerful than just if you had sex with a girl and like never talked to her again or just ghosted her out of the blue. I think that if you're because I think that there's a big distinction between like waiting until you find like a wife type material and just learning to just be a little bit more disciplined in your sexual approaches. So I'm not saying that you should like bang every single girl that you're talking to and you get a number like you're having sex with 100 women at once. I'm not saying that. But I'm also not saying that if you're talking to a girl and you like each other and there's chemistry there, there's potential there that you can't, go ahead and see what that's like sexually just let's say within, I don't know, a few months or something like that. I'm not saying that's wrong
Right.
either. I think that you can. I think you should, honestly. I think that's like a good, healthy thing to do. But if it were to end, I think you should do it in a respectful way because there's exes where I don't have a bad thing to say about them. They don't have a bad thing to say about me. We just didn't agree on certain values, on certain things in life. Um and we kind of went our separate ways. So it's
And you
it's all
guys
about how you
managed to actually keep it, 50-50, mutually agree on the breakup, or was it one side?
well, it was more me than them. So it
It's
wasn't
more you
100%.
breaking up with them. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in one case, the other time I got broken up with, so a little bit of
Okay.
both.
Because like if you were to just take those as an example, and I
Yeah,
don't know anything about those relationships, or just in general principle,
yeah.
uh I mean, at least from what I've noticed, and I've taken a decade of interest in trying to understand female nature,
Hmm.
and what I notice is that women very often, if they break up with the guy, they don't really have a lot of trauma from the experience, other than kind of disgust and maybe like, okay,
That's true.
ew.
Yeah,
But other than that, it doesn't like mess them up,
yeah,
right? The problems that women have are with the guys that leave them behind,
definitely.
and that becomes their like obsession, even though he's long gone for
Mhm.
years, and they still think about him. It's like, oh man, if
Yeah,
that would have worked out, my life would have been amazing, which it would not have been, right? But
yeah.
inside their brains, they have like this fantasy.
Hmm.
And um and when it comes from a man's perspective, like, if you break up with the woman, she's gonna have that,
Sure.
right? So it's like, um I just think it's very interesting how it's very tricky to get a mutual breakup. Like, it
Mhm.
happens very rarely. It's
Yeah.
usually one of the parties that are kind of like, I'm done,
Hmm.
like, I want to move on.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, just your thoughts on that, because I do agree that your approach is like, would decrease
Hmm.
the issues and problems by definitely 95
Yeah.
to 99%, right?
Hmm.
So it's extremely helpful, and I wish that everyone thought like you. I mean, the world would be an amazing place,
Yeah.
from that standpoint. But if we're gonna go off principle, because that's what, in my opinion, masculinity also is. It's like a man of principles.
Hmm.
Like, would it not be the right thing to do to then hold off until you've committed for life? And that's just kind of my
Hmm.
idea or conclusion that I've come to.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in my situation, it was. a little bit more one-sided. Maybe I could have said that. It was definitely more my decision to leave because we just didn't align on certain things. So that was kind of my take on it. And I'm probably a bit of an anomaly. Like I'm very like even if I break up with someone or if I don't want to talk to them, and I used to do the whole stuff where I would ghost, I would like not say anything and like I don't want to be that kind of guy anymore. So even if I were to walk away, I'm always a gentleman about it. I'm always very kind. I'm not gonna be like, oh, it's your fucking fault. You suck. Blah. I'm not gonna like do that toxic shouting match. Like that just isn't me. So even when we broke up, I had to tell her, and like it was hard for me to even break up with her because I just felt bad. Like I felt bad that it happened. Like I started to feel guilt, a little bit of shame, and maybe a little bit of shame in there too. Um, that I let it escalate to this point. But I was very kind about it. Like she'll still call me even now. Like sometimes she'll FaceTime me or talk to me. Not that we hang out and we're friends, but we're very civil with each other. We're very friendly. That like if she were to text me today and say, "Hey, I need help with something," like I'd say, "Okay, cool. Like what's up?" I wouldn't completely like ignore her or anything, right?
But would you not say that she still thinks about you because you broke up with her? Like from a romantic standpoint? Like if you were interested in
Romantically,
her now, would she probably actually want to be with you?
more than likely, I would say so. I'd say more than likely. But I mean, in that case, like I think that there's not much that I could do to control that. I mean, if I'm being just focused on what I can
But
control,
you could though. This is what the interesting point, and
yeah, go ahead.
I'm maybe making it a bit too controversial, and like,
Mm,
but I think it's important that we have this discussion, right?
yeah, definitely.
Just people in general, or
Mm,
especially men, because
sure.
like from what you mentioned is like, I don't know if I can control that. I can't control that. That's basically her issue right now. But that's the key and point. Like that issue would not have been there if that relationship wasn't opened, right?
Mm,
So you obviously weren't committed for life when you started the relationship with her.
mm,
Not necessarily that the intimacy is everything that caused you guys or for her to be so involved with you, because it could just be an emotional involvement as well,
yeah.
because that's kind of how women are wired. But
Mm,
if you guys had not entered into that non-committal, I guess you don't really know, right? You enter into a relationship and hope it works out. If it doesn't work out, it is what it is.
yeah.
But the fact that you did go into that relationship caused her to now uh, maybe have problems in the future. We don't know, right? We don't
Potentially.
know what goes on in her head and what's going to be the situation long term with her partner in the future, you know,
Mm,
and with the
yeah.
kids that she has. But it could have been avoided. That was just my point.
Sure. Well, that particular relationship was kind of interesting because, and I'll take responsibility. I probably wasn't ready to date her at that point, but she kind of brought it up and I was thinking about it. So I kind of just accepted, all right, maybe we should be exclusive and kind of made that decision. Thinking back, yeah, I probably would have been like, maybe not the best decision. Maybe we shouldn't do this. But again, I kind of didn't really have that much experience with relationship stuff. So I was like, all right,
And no one does,
let me try it,
that's the thing.
Yeah, so it was kind of a hindsight 2020. Maybe I shouldn't have done it and just committed to it. But again, if I was when I was with her, when I was in the relationship, my thought was, okay, let's like, is kids in the future? Is marriage in the future? Like, I was already thinking that way. So I was already kind of thinking this is where it's heading. But there
Mm,
was a couple of things that showed up. Where I was like, maybe not the best decision for me or for her.
right,
So
right.
to your point, yeah, maybe that's not the best thing to do. To decide to like get into a relationship before you know for sure that this person is that woman. Which I can't say I disagree with that. I think that that's a good approach. Um, I just think that you do have to be very intentional with um how you go about finding these women too, because we met off a dating app, so it was already kind of established that it was a connection type of thing.
Right, right. That makes sense. Yeah. And I mean, I didn't know this information 10 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like you can't go, it's always going to be hindsight 2020. But what we
Definitely.
can do is to learn from all of the experiences that we have had, right?
For sure.
And to see what type of experiences that other people have. It's like, well,
Yeah.
what is actually going on in the world, right? And
Mhm.
and I think that the biggest thing is promiscuity is damaging for women for sure.
Yeah.
It is damaging for pair bonding of couples in the future, and it's definitely not helpful for the future kids of that mother.
Sure.
And but at the same time, we have, like, there's all of these problems that are happening now of people not being educated on the subject
Yeah.
is going to cause people to become educated on the subject.
Hmm.
So, this process is necessary to figure out for us to be able to create an even better future. So you can
Hmm.
go back to patriarchy where women were a lot less promiscuous,
Yeah.
but they were in many ways forced in that circumstance,
Hmm.
right? Now they're not longer forced, and that's why we're getting educated on the subject.
Hmm.
So it's not that we're going to go back to the point where we're forcing women to be less promiscuous, but we're moving forward to a time and space where we as men take more responsibility, allowing women to still be free, but we understand that continuously sleeping around with a bunch of women is just not very helpful
Sure.
for anyone,
Hmm.
and for society at large. So,
Yeah.
there's, yeah, we're progressing.
Hmm.
There's a bright future there,
Yeah.
but we as men, I believe, do need to take more responsibility. And if we do, like, we're actually setting up for an amazing future where families are functioning, and we can be happier.
Hmm. No, I mean, I can agree with that, man. I think it's definitely not helpful for either one of us. I think that you highlighted a lot of negative things for men and for women because there's a lot of stuff that can happen. Um, so for you and like your advice, what would you say the best like way to go is? Because I know that you said like obviously waiting for the commitment, making sure that she's a girl that you can see in your future, obviously kind of being more disciplined with your sex, and who you give that to. So what would you say your I guess your kind of like solution is to that issue?
So I mean, I have I've got a 5 phases of leadership.
Mm,
This is one that I've developed over time myself.
yeah.
And number one is allow yourself to be led, which is basically like get a mentor,
Yeah.
like begin the process of building yourself up as a man. Become
Definitely.
valuable. Just going back to the beginning
Absolutely.
of this podcast, make yourself valuable. So number two is lead yourself. So
Mhm.
financially, physically, in every way that you can. The next level would be lead others. So this is now you maybe starting a business, and preferably,
Mhm.
and building up your financial freedom by having a team in your business. So there's a difference between a business owner who's just by himself and a business owner who's able to hire other people, right?
Mhm.
And once you've learned those skills and you've gone through the rejection and the sales and the marketing and all those issues that a business actually provides, I think it's very wise to go through that experience before you begin to include women into your life,
Yeah,
because you're
for
just
sure.
simply more ready, more mature. You've handled rejection, and to be honest, the women that you get at that point are 10 times better than the women you could
Way
get at
better.
level one.
Way better. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
it's like, if we're thinking long term, we're thinking commitment.
Mhm.
You want the best of the
Mhm.
best, right?
Yeah.
So, like, why would you not put yourself through that experience of voluntary celibacy for a time, whether that's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? The women that you get at the end of that time frame are going to be amazing compared
Mhm.
to the ones that you've got now.
Yeah.
And which leads me to the last two, which is lead women and lead kids.
Yeah.
And those are the two most difficult phases. There's a
Mhm.
lot of guys out there, including Patrick Bet David, who say like marriage is hard. Like, it's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever
Yeah.
do in your life, etc., etc.
Mhm.
And I'm married as well. I got 3 kids. And my recommendation, actually, puzzling enough for the people watching this podcast, but I actually do not recommend monogamy.
Interesting.
So what I teach my clients, because we're trying to build a long-term tribe here,
Hmm.
is I tell them, once you are financially successful, in my opinion, the absolute best way that is according to female nature and the way that they're designed, and actually biologically how we're designed as men. And we can obviously, this is a whole can of worms that we could talk about
Yeah,
another
that's all
time
I was
again.
thinking. Yep.
But I tell them that the ultimate would be to have three,
Three
women,
wives.
three women. And obviously, in some spaces, this is illegal, right?
Sure.
Just from the aspect of you're not supposed to.
Yeah, yeah.
But in the promiscuous world that we're living in right now, as long as you don't get married to them and you are wise with the law wherever you are living,
Mm-hmm.
you actually can have three women without getting married to them, as long as you understand how to retain them.
Mm.
So this is the key. If you don't know how to retain women, then you shouldn't really get involved with women, because it
Yeah,
actually is a man's responsibility to understand how to retain a woman, and a woman who is happy will never leave you.
it's true.
So
That is
so
true.
if you understand how female nature works, you understand how to maintain and keep three women.
Mm.
In my opinion, from what all of the studies that I've done over this decade, is the number is three. It's the magic
Mm.
number. I'm not living that, so people will
Yeah.
say, "Oh well, but you're not practicing what you're preaching, etc."
Mm-hmm.
But that's multiple reasons for that, because I don't want them to work ever. So I need to be financially ready at a high level.
Yeah.
And number two, I also have had kids for a long period of time, like they're 12, 10, and 8. So it's just not the right time to start that years
Mm.
ago.
Right.
But the time is approaching,
Mhm.
so we're moving towards that. And I would highly not recommend monogamy. That's just my
Interesting.
take on the subject.
Yeah. That's funny you're mentioning that because I was doing a lot of research about that specifically, like monogamy, polygamy. I was literally just like researching that last night. And there's multiple
Last
different,
night,
literally last night. Yeah.
dang,
That's so
interesting.
funny. Like there's a lot of case studies about this, the benefits and the cons of honestly of both. And I think it is interesting because I'm still pretty young. I'm like 27, so I'm like not quite there yet with kids and family and a wife. One day for sure, but right now, I'm kind of in the phase of just building this business, getting myself right. That's kind of where I'm at. So I mean, I do find this interesting. I have my own kind of like preset beliefs about relationships and things like that. So while I'm totally interested in hearing more than that. I do kind of want to play devil's advocate just a little bit
Go for it. Go for it.
because I want to ask if um having, let's say, like multiple wives and multiple women like that, once you get to a certain level, of course, is that still, how does that tie into the responsibility aspect of it? Because I think, like, I'm not saying that's being promiscuous, but I wonder how that's different than just promiscuity and like a guy who's single. Like, just maybe kind of explain to me like what the difference is there.
100%. I think is a huge difference. And the
Yeah,
difference is the aspect of you never sleep with a woman outside of lifelong commitment.
sure, sure.
That's the responsibility.
Mm,
So have you mastered that yet? How to keep a woman even though you've never, do you get what I'm saying? Like,
mm,
so
mm,
you only enter into that type of relationship when you know it's you guys,
yeah,
and you're going to stick with it for life. And the thing is that if you actually find women that want that and who love each other, and you actually create a systemized approach for that to happen, which we've developed in Men of High Value,
mm,
at least theoretically, and I'll
mm,
admit that. We have to prove it, right? The proof's in the pudding. But in
yeah,
general, if you know how to do that and you keep them for life, then these women could have been virgins, and then you will have been their only partner for life.
mm,
I mean, what more beautiful family situation is that than, like, just from the aspect of like, monogamy, marriage, the marriage laws, all the stuff that's going on these days, and a lot of men have this in mind, right?
yeah,
And then you kind of just toss it over and look at, man, 3 women. I mean, bro, that's freaking awesome. Like, and then you actually get to toss in the he's highly respected. Like, not only did he get 3 women, but he's
Yeah.
keeping 3 women and he's kept them for life.
Yeah.
Like, that's a strong, powerful family situation,
Mm-hmm.
and you can build a tribe around that.
Mm.
So
Interesting.
so but I totally understand the aspect of like, well, isn't that kind of promiscuous? And it's like,
Mm.
if the women are happy and enjoy their lives and do not feel like, if anything, they actually feel that their lives are better as a result, because they understand that women are social creatures. They like to have fun. They
Yep.
don't like to be lonely.
Mm.
And maybe they want to be stay at home mothers,
Yeah.
but you can't do that if you're just one woman and still have a thriving social life when everyone else of your friends or people that you know go to work, and you're there stuck with the rugrats for all day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, it's a very tricky situation these days to try and live monogamy and
Mm.
homeschool your kids. I mean, this is what we did. We homeschooled the kids, and
Mm.
and it was tough. Like, it was
Sure.
very difficult. So again,
Definitely.
my mess has become my message.
Yeah.
Yeah, in many ways.
Yeah.
But we should definitely talk about this again if it does,
Sure.
if your audience wants to, I guess.
Yeah, I would love to because I definitely again I'm still pretty young, so I'm still kind of learning this stuff. And the way that I grew up with my family, so it was two-parent household, like,
Same with me.
monogamous. That's kind of like always been ingrained into our minds. And
Yeah,
even now, I think like that's probably still the way I would want to go. But who knows? Maybe that changes 10 years from now or whatever it is. I'm not sure. But yeah, I kind of have my own beliefs around that. And I don't think, and this is where I think like is a good, it's good to have these kinds of conversations because
we have to.
we have to. Yeah, we have to. Because even if we don't completely like see 100% eye to eye on it or agree, we could still have it and be civil about it and say, "Oh, well, I understand your point there. Here's this and that." But it's healthy conversation, and I think more men especially need to hear from two different, perspectives.
Absolutely. Yeah, I the what makes up the truth is really a bunch of experiences discussed back
Yeah,
and forth, right?
absolutely.
And we're continuously moving towards, my definition for truth is that which works in the
Yeah,
long run and in
true.
the big scheme of things. So if that's kind of the ultimate goal, just figuring out what is it that works, like what creates
Yeah,
heaven amongst society and amongst people, amongst families,
yeah,
and then let's just do more of that, and then less of the stuff that we've noticed does not work,
yep.
and that will just continuously evolve us to a better day, in my opinion.
Hmm. I can't disagree with that, man. I think, yeah, if I think the whole family aspect thing and raising children and because I think that creates strong society, strong culture, strong world. So I'm on board with that. Um, I might just have one wife when I do it. I don't know yet. We'll see. We'll see what happens with my life, but that's just kind of my thinking of it. But it was definitely a good perspective to have and good to talk about for sure.
Awesome, man. Bro, I love being on this podcast, man.
Yeah,
Can't
man.
wait to be back if you'll have me.
Absolutely. No, 100%. I'll definitely maybe have you in a future episode. Maybe have a couple of you guys with different because I've done this a few times where I've had like a panel where there's a couple of us on at once. Maybe we can have like a big discussion about just
Would
certain
love it.
ideas and stuff. That'd be interesting.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah, man. Well, I think that's an awesome way to close it out here, man. I definitely appreciate, you coming on, sharing your perspectives, giving good value, kind of just giving good content for everybody. Um, if people want to find you, learn more about what you got going on, yeah, where can they find you?
At Men of High Value, Instagram, YouTube, all of my stuff's there. So
Nice.
yeah, man.
Cool. And obviously I'll leave Joseph's stuff down in the comment section if you guys want to go check out more of what he's got going on. You know where my stuff is. My links are down below. Coaching's down below if you want to work with me. I have all that stuff in the description comment section. If you like the podcast, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. all that YouTube stuff. So that's pretty much it, guys. We're gonna get going. We got a busy day, and we'll check in next week. I got another guest coming on. It's gonna be a good one. So see you guys next week, and have a good one. Peace.